The strengths and weaknesses of Angola. Welcome to Explore and thanks for watching. In this video, we shall be looking at the strengths and weaknesses of Angola. Angola is indeed an oil-rich country and Africa's second largest oil exporter. Angola's economic growth is highly dependent on oil price developments and a declining international oil price. Therefore, that remains a cause of concern. Angola is a unique country with strengths and weaknesses, and thus in this video, we will be exploring both in order to make value judgments on the country. The strengths of the African nation, Angola, are the internal aspects of the country, either natural or man-made, which helps or fosters the country's growth and progress. The weaknesses, on the other hand, are internal aspects that hinder the country's improvement and are strikes which make a nation less attractive to investors, foreigners, and most importantly, its citizens. If you're new here, welcome. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. The strengths of Angola. 1. Significant oil production and liquefied natural gas producer. The Economist reported in 2008 that diamonds and oil make up 60% of Angola's economy, almost all of the country's revenue and all of its dominant exports. Growth is almost entirely driven by rising oil production, which surpassed 1.4 million barrels per day and is expected to grow to 2 million barrels per day. In December 2006, Angola was admitted as a member of OPEC. According to the Heritage Foundation, a conservative American think tank, oil production from Angola has increased so significantly that Angola now is China's biggest supplier of oil. Angola has vast hydrocarbon and mineral resources, ample arable land, and a high potential for hydropower generation and tourism. Due to the hydropower potentials of Angola, it has developed several hydropower plants and still working on many others. The natural resource base and oil money has supported the economy of Angola in many aspects. Oil revenues have also supported low public and external debts. The commodity has also positively contributed to the economy as oil production generates 98% of the country's exports. Luanda's construction boom is financed largely by oil and diamonds. Number 2. A rich culture. Angolan culture has been heavily influenced by Portuguese culture, especially in terms of language and religion, and the culture of the indigenous ethnic groups of Angola, predominantly Bantu culture. The diverse ethnic communities like the Ovimbundu, Ambundu, Bakongo, Chokwe, Mbunda and other peoples, to varying degrees, maintain their own cultural traits, traditions and languages. But in the cities where slightly more than half of the population now live, a mixed culture has been emerging since colonial times, in Luanda, since its foundation in the 16th century. In this urban culture, the Portuguese heritage has become more and more dominant. African roots are evident in music and dance and is molding the way in which Portuguese is spoken. This process is well reflected in contemporary Angolan literature, especially in the works of Angolan authors. In 2014, Angola resumed the National Festival of Angolan Culture after a 25-year break. The festival took place in all the provincial capitals and lasted for 20 days, with the theme Culture as a Factor of Peace and Development. Number 3. International financial support. Angola has been able to garner financial support from many countries, but as a trade for their rich natural resources, or to finance projects the lending nations will benefit from. Of its several hydroelectric projects, China has been one of the main investors, as well as the World Bank with various conditions of the loans. Most of these investments by China and other countries usually translate to thousands of barrels of petroleum. The weaknesses of Angola. Number 1. Low level of development. Angola is amid the countries with the lowest level of development in the world. Very low rankings in the Human Development Index of 148 on 187 and the Corruption Perceptions Index of 157 on 176 emphasize the low standard of living in Angola. Number 2. Instability in the economy. Although the country's economy has grown significantly since Angola achieved political stability in 2002, mainly due to fast rising earnings in the oil sector, Angola faces huge social and economic problems. These are in part a result of almost continual armed conflicts from 1961 on. Although the highest level of destruction and socio-economic damage took place after the 1975 independence, during the long years of civil war. However, high poverty rates and blatant social inequality chiefly stem from persistent authoritarianism, neo-patrilineal practices at all levels of the political, administrative, military and economic structures, and of a pervasive corruption. The main beneficiaries are political, administrative, economic and military power holders who have accumulated and continue to accumulate enormous wealth. Number 3. Agricultural potentials not fully utilized. Agriculture and forestry are areas of potential opportunity for the country, but Angola is working below its potentials. The African Economic Outlook Organization states that Angola requires 4.5 million tons a year of grain but grows only about 55% of the maize it needs, 20% of the rice, and just 5% of its required wheat. In addition, the World Bank estimates that less than 3% of Angola's abundant fertile land is cultivated, and the economic potential of the forestry sector remains largely unexploited. Before independence in 1975, Angola was a breadbasket of Southern Africa and a major exporter of bananas, coffee, and sisal, but 3 decades of civil war between 1975 and 2002 destroyed fertile countryside, left it littered with landmines, and drove millions into the cities. The country now depends on expensive food imports, mainly from South Africa and Portugal, while more than 90% of farming is done at the family and subsistence level. Thousands of Angolan small-scale farmers are trapped in poverty. Number 4. Undiversified economic base. Angola is significantly dependent on oil, and that is a recipe for disease because all of the aspects of the economy will be dependent on a product with highly volatile price systems. Since any progress on economic diversification is lacking, the country's economic performance is highly exposed to the risk of a declining oil price. The declining oil prices have led to economic recovery slowing down as a result of dependence on oil. The strong economic recovery of 2012 was short-lived and might even be questionable. Growth figures of 2012 have been namely downwardly adjusted towards 3.8%, down from reported estimates of 8% before. Output growth uncertainty seems to remain high, as growth estimates for 2013 vary significantly between different institutions and range between 5.4% and 8.3%. The discrepancies are thus most likely resulting from the delayed commissioning of new oil fields, with oil production accounting for 98% of total exports, 70% of total government revenues, and more than 50% of GDP. Angola's economy is highly dependent on oil. Number 5. Vulnerable to an oil price reversal. After 4 years of contracting GDP, precipitated by falling oil prices and prolonged by declining production in mature fields, activity will continue to be dampened by the gloomy outlook of this sector, which accounts for 40% of GDP. The decrease in crude production due to insufficient investment in exploitation activities in recent years is not expected to be offset by the ramp-up of the Kaombo projects, two production and storage units, which came out stream in 2018 and 2019. The expected decline in oil prices in the year 2020 will thus be putting additional pressure on oil revenues, on which the country is highly dependent, due to lack of economic diversification, which limits public investment, particularly in infrastructure projects. Private consumption will likely be affected by persistently high inflation and a significant tax burden, which will squeeze household purchasing power. IMF support, along with measures to make resource management more transparent, may attract foreign private investors, but the infrastructure deficit, slow and inefficient institutions, and endemic corruption remain key obstacles. Reflecting its very unaffordable business environment, Angola dropped 4 places compared with 2019 to becoming 177th out of 190 in the Doing Business 2020 ranking. Number 6. Deficient infrastructure. Indebtedness. Angola's ability to secure loans has also left the country in a lot of problems, including heavy indebtedness. Since December 2018, Angola has been under an IMF program, which was a prerequisite for obtaining a $3.7 billion extended credit facility. A decline in oil revenues would make it impossible to reduce the budget deficit, which is financed by bilateral sources, mainly China, and multilateral resources, as well as by bond issues. The 2019-2022 privatization program, which is being overseen by the World Bank and includes the oil company Sonangol, could also contribute to the financing. After peaking in 2019, mainly due to the depreciation of the Kwanza public debt, which is more than 80% denominated in foreign currencies, is expected to decline in 2020. Nevertheless, the risk of over-indebtedness remains substantial, as the debt is highly vulnerable to currency depreciation and changes in oil prices. The banking sector is thus in precarious health, as asset quality has lined with the sector's moderate activity levels. Full liberalization of the exchange rate, which was introduced in October 2019 by scrapping the 2% fluctuation band, and the Kwanza's subsequent 20% depreciation, eased the pressure on the external accounts, but did not reduce the gap between the official and parallel market rates, thus heralding continued depreciation. Conclusion. Angola is a country with a great natural, cultural, touristic, and economic potential, amongst others. The potentials and value of Angola is a great asset to its economic base, but it's a two-edged sword, as most of the issues the nation face also arise from its greatest assets. Angola is one of the oil-rich nations in the world, and this helps put the country on financial security from both oil revenues and exchange deals with financial organizations as well as foreign creditors. But this same asset leaves the nation under control to these countries given the volatile prices of oil in the world market as well as accepting deals that do not serve the country. The killing knife is the aspect of little or no economic diversification, which if solved, Angola will be well on its way to a brighter future. There you have it, explorers. Those were the strengths and weaknesses of Angola. Thanks for watching this video. If you want us to cover any of your top 10 topics, leave a suggestions in the comments and we will do well to grant your request. Also, if you did enjoy this video, do well to give it a thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe and share with your friends.